right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Kyle. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Kyle Bibby. I'm a Naval Academy graduate, a Marine Corps veteran, and I'm the National Campaigns Manager for Common Defense, calling in from Jersey City, New Jersey. I want to thank you all for joining us for our Common Defense Black Veteran Voices panel. Every year during Black History Month, the country takes a collective pause to reflect on the diverse and unique history of Black Americans in the United States. During this time, we here at Common Defense like to highlight the special history and experiences of Black veterans across the many generations of service in our history. But this year, we figured rather than simply reflecting on our past, we wanted to sit down with veterans serving in our communities right now and examine what led them to service in the military, what impact it had on them in their life journey, and how they continue now service in their communities. With that in mind, I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves before we jump into our discussion. So let me start with Ms. Kate Smith. You mind introducing yourself, please?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kate Smith. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate, so therefore an Air Force veteran. I'm also a Notre Dame lawyer, and currently I'm one of the organizers at Common Defense.
Thanks for joining us, Kate. Miss Joanna Sweat, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Sweat. I served in the United States Marine Corps. I'm currently residing in Phoenix, Arizona. And I am a co-founder for an organization called Vets Forward here in Phoenix. And I am a volunteer organizer for Common Defense.
Great. Ms. Tashandra Pollard.
Hello, my name is Ms. Tashandra Pollard. I am currently from Houston, Texas. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. I'm a graduate of Texas Southern University, and I do a lot of media work for Common Defense, as well as some organizational work and advocacy.
Great. Mr. Derico Baker.
Good evening, y'all. Like I said, my name is Derico Baker, Marine Corps veteran. A former sergeant, and currently I work with my county's Habitat for Humanity's Neighborhood Revitalization Committee. On our current project is the Housing Homeless Veterans Project. So I'd love to get into more detail about that later.
Thanks, Rico. And lastly, Mr. Shamar Farmer.
Good evening, Shamar Farmer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran here in Norwich, Connecticut. I work for HVRP Easter Seals, helping homeless veterans gain employment to reintegrate them into society.
Excellent. Great. Thank you all for joining our panel and agreeing to share your experiences with our viewers today. Let me start by asking a bit about the breadth of generational experiences we have here and have each of you explain what the climate was like in the United States when you chose to join. So how did that factor into your decision to either enlist or seek a commission? And why don't we start with Ms. Kate Smith? You mentioned you're an Air Force Academy graduate.
Yes, I entered the Air Force Academy in the summer of 1978. At that time in our country, the economy was horrible. Jobs were not prevalent, and I was the middle kid of five. My dad worked in a steel foundry, and we really didn't have the money to send me to college. My brothers went to school on athletic scholarships, but at that time, mostly girls didn't get full rides to school on athletics and not a whole lot on academics. So I joined the Air Force to make a future for myself. I think if I'd had money, I might have made a different choice.
Great. Jojo, you want to share your experiences?
I joined around the latter part of 1997. Minimum wage back then was less than $5 still, and I was a young mother and married. Well, not yet married, and times was hard. And I graduated high school in '96 and had my child at that time, and so college at that point wasn't an option. And then just trying to survive. I think back on it now. because my rent back then was probably $500 and I was struggling to pay that. And a friend of mine on a whim had decided to join the Marine Corps and introduced me to that. And I'll preface that I was actually raised in a military family, Air Force brat, and it had never dawned on me to ever join prior to this stage in my life. So really I joined for better economic opportunities, education, and just providing a better life for my daughter.
Thank you for sharing. Tasha, want to talk about how you joined the Navy?
Absolutely. Mine is kind of like a movie-induced choice. I watched Top Gun, and I made a decision that when I graduated high school, I was going to join the Navy and become a pilot. I joined right out of high school. The day I swore into the military at 12 noon that evening, I graduated from high school that night at 8:30. So I'd already planned my life out. The majority of the people in my family on both sides served in almost every military conflict this country has been in that African Americans were allowed to serve in. One of my grandfathers was actually left behind in Europe once the Americans pulled out. So listening to those stories and deciding that I was going to become one of the ones among the ranks of those who served this country, I enlisted. And I'd say it was the best decision I made. It wasn't good or bad, but it's one of the best ones I've made thus far.
All right, Rico, you want to share?
Yep. Much like Kate, I was a middle child as well, middle child of 5 specifically too. And I, much like Tasha, joined straight out of high school as well. You know what I mean? But 2012, that's when I joined. Immediately after graduation, I could not tell you the climate at the time. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know anything back then. You know what I mean? And in all honesty, the only reason I joined the Marine Corps is because they're the only branch that even approached me. I didn't even know there were other branches at the time. Like I was an airhead back in high school. I genuinely, my head was elsewhere. So they approached me, and I wasn't exactly a star student, and we were looking to financially struggling too, as much like everybody else here from, poor family and all that. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna join the Marine Corps. And I will say, if I had to say any kind of influence to that, I like family-wise, no influence, no military family background and whatnot. But the movie Battlefield Los Angeles, I don't know if y'all saw that one, the Marines fighting the aliens and whatnot. I thought that, that was pretty cool to me. So I was like, okay, well, all right, Marine Corps, riot, kill. But no, I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea what the Marine Corps was. I was just some airheaded high schooler looking for something other than working at McDonald's. And I'm all the better for it. For better or worse, I'm all the better for it.
So funny story, that movie, Battlefield Los Angeles, early in the movie, there's a picture at a command post with a bunch of Marines standing out front. That was my unit, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. And I actually know the Marines that were standing there. And when we saw the movie, we all freaked out. We're like, oh, hands up, it's Como, we know everybody. Anyway, so, Jamar, you're up.
So I joined in 2010. I had just graduated in 2009. Did a semester or 2 at a community college. I'm also adopted, and my parents were adamant that, I either choose school or choose something else. I'm not going to sit there on the couch. So one day I was not in class, and I was approached by a Marine recruiter, and here I am.
All right, great. So, quick background for me. When I chose to join the military, I had a rather intense conversation with an aunt who told me, and I quote, that joining the military as a black man would get me, quote, sent directly to the front lines to die. Now, that's pretty extreme, and fortunately she was wrong, obviously. But how was the reception in some of your families to choose to join? Was your community supportive of it? Is it something that happened common in your community or family? My family, we had some people who served, but, we had some folks who had very strong opinions about, like, you should not serve, right? And others who were not as, aggressively against it. So how about Shamar? You want to start on this one?
Absolutely. So no one in my family has served aside from my adopted father's father, so my grandfather. I've never met him, but He was the only one who served. He served in the Airborne Rangers. He died in 2008. And from there, it wasn't like it was a bad reception with my family. They were more receptive of it because they realized that I needed to better myself. So they chose not to express their feelings about it, but I could tell that some of them were apprehensive.
Rico, you want to share?
My family pretty much only understanding the military came from movies. So much like, you know what I mean? They thought I was going to war and all that. Like immediately they're like, oh, we'll go. Like, oh God, you're going to go to war. Oh God. Like it was a mixture of excitement and support, but also concern. Like, I mean, even throughout the years, just constantly kept being like, are you going to war? Are you going, or did you go fight? I'm like, no, I'm an aircraft technician. I don't do that. But yeah, no, like my family was pretty supportive of it. It was just, like I said, they knew just about as much about the military as I did, which was basically nothing. So, you know, it was all right. You know what I mean?
Tasha?
Well, I had mixed reactions. My father didn't want me to go because I joined right after Tailhook. Tailhook was like 93, 94. So they were doing a huge push to put more women on ships. So the fear was that I would become the next victim of sexual assault or military sexual trauma. On top of that, one of my grandfathers, he suffered from PTSD, which they called shell shock back in the day. And he would self-medicate through alcohol. He died of alcoholism. So there was a fear that I would become either a victim of sexual assault, I would go to war because they didn't understand that Navy don't really go on shore, that I would go to war and I'd become another victim of PTSD, or I would just perish during combat. So there was mixed feelings about me being a woman joining and being the only really Navy in the family that was female. But there were those who supported me and wanted to see the best happen.
And Jojo, how did your family and community respond?
Well, like I had said before, I'm from a legacy military family. And so my father, who was born in 1941, joined the Air Force in the 60s as a means of him improving his life and having shared equality in America. The reaction from him was like, what are you thinking about the Marine Corps? Because I'm his daughter and I'm his firstborn, and he's a Vietnam War veteran twice over, and as an airman. And so I know we make a lot of jokes about the chair force, but my daddy was part of a different kind of Air Force, as he'd like to say. But he was like, child, you crazy. They gonna eat you alive. And he said, I don't know why you would go and do that when you have the Air Force. And really, I had known my dad's career and watched him, but it never was exciting. You know, he had TAD here and there, whatever. And I had never known anything about a Marine or what the Marine Corps was. So really, I was enamored. And so when we had that discussion, he was just like, well, you already done did it. And so he said, don't wash out. And he bet me $100 because he really thought that the Marine Corps was a lot crazier probably than it is. But he had also forgot that I was raised by my crazy Korean mother. And she was fine with it because I had a baby and she was like, I'm not taking care of you.
All right, Ms. Kate, you want to share?
That's a funny story, Jojo. So my class at the Air Force Academy was the third class of women that were allowed to go to service academies. So it was new, it was different. I am, I think by my count, the 9th Black woman to graduate from the Air Force Academy. And it was such an unknown. And my father didn't know too much about it. He thought, oh, you joined the service. And I'm like, yeah, Daddy, I'm going to go to the Air Force Academy. And he was like, okay, good luck. And it wasn't until one of his coworkers at his job said, Clyde, your girl got into the Air Force Academy. What a big deal. And after that, he was like proud of it. And we were just raised to be independent. He had served in Korea. His brother had served in Korea. Some of his other brothers had served in World War II. My little brother served in the Army. I've got a great nephew that's in the Army, but we never looked at it as a career. It was, you got drafted, you went and served. So for me to voluntarily do that, and it was prestigious at the time. I guess it's still pretty prestigious, but they just didn't have any understanding of what I was about to go do. But they were always supportive.
Great. So, regarding continuing your service and staying committed to your oath, how do you continue to currently serve in your community? What sort of advocacy work do you do? Give us examples if you want. So why don't we start with you, Tasha?
Absolutely. I'm actually a women's advocate. I do a lot of work for women who are victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. I use my media platforms. I do movie producing and directing that focuses on those topics. I'm also an actress and a screenplay writer. So I use those platforms to promote that, as well as I'm a radio personality. And those are some of the topics that I bring forth on my radio show. But I also stand with Black Lives Matter. I support the movement in regards to police reform with Common Defense, as well as various other topics that we focus on. Right now, we're focusing on dealing with the climate change and how it's affecting disadvantaged communities. We're focusing on immigration and how it's affecting people coming from Central and South America, throughout the Caribbean and the continent of Africa. So I continue to serve because I understand that as a service member, it is my duty to ensure that all Americans and all human beings across the board have their rights acknowledged, and they are seen as people that should receive due diligence in regards to human rights.
Thanks for sharing that, Tasha. And I just want to highlight Tasha's a quadruple threat here in terms of media skills. But I have a quick follow-up. So what sort of skills would you say you got in the Navy that helped you with some of this work?
I was what's called a cryptologic technicians operator, or a CTO. So my main focus was communications. That involves public relations, speaking, that involves briefings. So I learned how to do analyst work as a crypto tech. And then moving into computer system security analyst, network intrusion detection, certified ethical hacking, all of that gave me my IT skills, which then formed my ability to move into media, which I started learning how to do photography. I started learning journalism by writing some of the analyst reports that I would give to commanding officers, as well as many other aspects of presenting the information that I would find to leadership.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. Rico, you want to talk a little bit about the work you do in the community now?
Yes, of course. Like I said earlier, I work with my county's Habitat for Humanity's Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, and our current project is the Housing Homeless Veterans Project. And as a veteran, what that is the reason why they mostly saw me out because of my veteran status, is because it made me more easily be able to connect with veterans in our local area and other veterans organizations like ours to help me better facilitate this project. Like I had to literally find all the veterans in North Carolina first, and then narrow it down to where they would specifically congregate within each city and county, and then take it from there. And I would say the military discipline that I got through the Marine Corps definitely helped me be able to take charge on projects like this, because while I was in I was always big on taking the lead on whatever I could, and I'm not gonna lie, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I learned and grew, and because of that, that has better positioned me to be able to do what I'm doing now as a veteran and veterans advocate. That's about it. I would say is the other things I do is with media, is I freelance writer and YouTuber and all that jazz, but I wouldn't say the Marine Corps necessarily helped me with that. That was just kind of also had to learn as I went.
Thank you, Rico. Jojo, you want to share a little bit?
So I do a couple of different things in advocacy. I started my career in advocacy based off of my transition experience. I joined the Marine Corps in 1997, got out in 2007, a little bit prior to kind of the big welcome home from us post 9/11 era veterans. And even the establishment of the post 9/11 GI Bill hadn't happened yet. And so transition for me was really rough as a returning minority service woman and coming to a demographic like Arizona, which doesn't do a really good job in representing the total veteran populace to include, disenfranchised and marginalized populations. So based on kind of my hiccups that I went through, I started to learn more about the disparity that was happening out there, and just really tried to fill the void and started working with women veterans, minority veterans here in the area, and making sure that they had their equal benefits, just as any other service member did. On top of that, that led me into the nonprofit space, which then, with just the current climate and politics and in our country, just pushed me even further as I watched, all these disparities happen across all these different populations. I just felt that it was very unfair. I was tired of the veteran hero complex narrative that I was hearing all the time that didn't include me or other veterans of color. And I knew deep, rich African American history in the military from my father, his family. And so it just was a tragedy to me to not feel that while I was in the service and then post-service. And now where I'm at is really in the political space, advocating. For me, a couple of topics are racial equality, obviously. And I'm a huge advocate as a victim of military sexual trauma, several times over a 10-year military career. So I speak very loudly in that space to make change and reform. And I will say that the Marine Corps definitely prepared me for that, because I came into the Marine Corps as a woman, which is already very different than most branches of services, although the same, but we're very much smaller compared to the male population there. And on top of that, I was in a communications MOS at the time that back in those days, they were flooding with women in those combat service support roles under General Krulak. And so I had this, haphazard career of having to fit in, having to make my way, make my voice be heard, and always felt compelled so, based on how I was raised. And so that naturally came out of me more as I exited this and have worked my career pathway.
So, quick follow-up, Jojo, were you ever a recruiter?
I was a recruiter, the only female recruiter in RS Denver from 2003 to 2007, meritoriously promoted to sergeant. Thank you very much.
So that explains a lot, because you came on with this organizing skill already. You had the Marine Corps instruction book on how to organize people.
Yes, sir.
That explains quite a bit. So, okay, next, Kate, you want to share a bit?
I got out of the Air Force before some of you were even born. And it wasn't I don't think, it certainly laid the foundation for my education and what I went on to do. But I got out of the Air Force. I went to law school. I relearned how much I loved the Constitution and the oath that I swore. But it really wasn't until I went to the Veterans Organizing Institute in 2008. Tasha was in my cohort. Kyle, you were one of the facilitators, that I found my veteran voice, that I realized that my experience in the military would make me credible on the issues that I care most about. One of the things that I do volunteer with is a group called ZASA, Zoomies Against Sexual Assault, at the Air Force Academy. And we advocate to help make sure that survivors of sexual assault get the support they need. And also, we attend every court martial of cadets that happens at the academy. So I'm really proud of that advocacy for women and for men, because women aren't the only people who are assaulted in the military. And so it made a real fit. I've lobbied with Common Defense on the issues of military sexual trauma. I'm happy that the Military Justice Improvement Act, that bill is gaining a little more traction in the Biden administration. So I think all of it prepared me to be the voice that I hope I am in progressive issues and causes, and the work I do at Common Defense.
Great, thanks for sharing, Shamar.
So I realized from the Marine Corps early on that if I did not advocate for myself, I would be steamrolled by being one of the only Black males in my unit, being a Black Marine as a whole. From there, I went to Quinnipiac University, graduated, and now I work in the community helping veterans get employed in the community, also helping them with supportive services for veterans and their families. So if a veteran comes along and they need help getting employed, I help them with that. But if their families, a spouse, a dependent needs housing or supportive services, we help in that realm as well.
All right, so quick follow-up on our previous question. Your families had a certain reaction, your community had a certain reaction. You probably had certain expectations when you came into the military. How did you meet those expectations? So like, for instance, for me, I was a Naval Academy, or I am a Naval Academy graduate. I went into the Marine Corps. I had very particular views of what the Marine Corps would be. And I thought it would be a lot, well, it's definitely very regimented and disciplined, but I mean, people who actually know the Marine Corps know that sometimes it's also kind of sloppy and loud and messy, right? So my expectations were not met in some ways, and in other ways it was. So why don't we start with Jojo? You want to give us some of your opinions on that? Like how your expectations in the military?
I didn't know what the heck I was getting into joining the Marine Corps. Because I knew I had signed an active duty contract. I had known the years that I had signed up for, but it didn't all click. I think because they build it that way. They kind of put you in a fog and you got to go through all these processes. But even down to my job, when they told me, oh, you know, you've qualified to be in communications. And I remember my recruiter really pushing that it was kind of like journalism, you know, which it's not. I'm a grunt. And so when I think it all hit me when I got to 29 Palms. And I was like, ooh, this is not like the bases we lived on with my daddy. Like we were stationed in Holland, in Europe, you know. So I was like, what is this? But there's no choice. You can't get out. You just kind of got to make it the best you can. And then the Marine Corps did me real good royally and sent me to Okinawa for my first tour, leaving my family. And honestly, even though that sucked, it probably was the best thing for me to really establish my career as a Marine and understand that without the complexity of having a family as a private PFC, right? And so that was kind of that initial experience. But yeah, whatever I got from the Marine Corps was not what I thought I was getting, but there was good in there.
All right, Tasha, you want to share?
Absolutely. So I joined with the expectation that I would go through what's called a C school and learn combative communications. And then eventually I would serve about roughly a year, and then I could cross over into aviation, possibly going to Officers Candidate School, or OCS. Well, upon reporting to my first duty station, which was the USS Fletcher out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, I realized that that dream was going to be squashed. I wasn't going to be able to walk into the plans that I had set for myself to be a top gun in the U.S. Navy. I literally experienced some discriminatory setbacks that made it impossible for me to make it to the next rank, to qualify for those things that I was trying to achieve. For example, I received a very low evaluation score that nearly kept me from taking the advancement exam to move to the rank of second class petty officer. And it was over some things that had happened like a year and a half prior to the exam. And in many cases, it was discriminatory. And I actually had to take my chain of command up to see the captain to rebuttal that decision. Now, they ruled it in my favor, but by the time it was given the ruling for me to take the exam, I had fought so hard just to be able to take it, I hadn't even really had a chance to study because they sent me to do what's called FSA, food service attendant. So that was their way of reprisal. I'm going to send you down to the scullery to make you work so that you won't have time to study to take the exam and become a second class petty officer. So it was those ups and downs of my military career that it didn't kill me, but it made me stronger in the process. So that way, when I did get out, not only could I speak on my behalf, but I learned how to advocate for others while working with Common Defense and while standing as a woman's advocate.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Tasha. Shamar, you want to talk a little bit about some of your expectations, dashed or confirmed?
So I joined the Marine Corps. It was a shell shock for me because I wasn't sure what I was walking into. Nothing against you, JoJo, but the recruiter. But once I got to Japan, my eyes were opened up a little bit more. There was a chaplain on base. We were the only two black males on base at the time. He was from Georgia. He was a Southern Baptist chaplain, and his RP attacked him. So he had to be kicked off base. And they were looking for someone to not only drive the chaplain around, but also facilitate all the chaplain's needs that RP would normally do. My platoon sergeant told me at the time in front of our whole Motor T platoon, you can go down there and be with your people. That was a very, I don't even know how to describe it except what it was. It was a very racist statement. And me being I was a PFC at the time, he's a platoon sergeant. I was trying to respect the rank, but it was just a disgusting thing to say to someone. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Shamar. And actually, for some of the viewers, the irony of that discussion or that story, Shamar's first command was also my first command. I arrived after all of this had taken place. And interestingly, too, after I got there, they sent like 5 black staff sergeants. So, I mean, not that, but it's just, it's interesting how, these sort of things were said, and me coming in as the black company commander, I just finished my tour in Afghanistan. I had no idea this sort of stuff was going on. Right. So it really speaks to kind of how, big these small units can be at time. I mean, this was a unit of about 120 Marines, so, and I never would have imagined in my own unit that sort of thing was taking place. So, Kate, do you want to share?
I tell people attending the Air Force Academy was the best mistake of my life. If I had known better, I should have gone to Stanford. But going to the academy, it did 3 things for me. It got me out of my small town in Kansas. I was a small enough school. I was able to play intercollegiate athletics, and I graduated from college with no debt. So the Air Force, and I served my time. So it met my expectations. But what it did in exceeding my expectations was every time I interview for a job, anytime I have a conversation with someone, people say, "Oh, you went to the Air Force Academy? Really?" And I tell them if I was going to make stuff up, I'd make up I was a neurophysicist from Harvard. But so the Air Force did meet my expectations. It did all the things that I asked it to do for me, and I did all the things that were expected of me. And I loved the Air Force that didn't always love me back. So my time in the uniform taught me a lot, but it took me a long time to get over some of the racist and sexist things that happened to me.
Thank you for sharing that, Kate. Rico, you want to give us, your expectations, how they were met or ruined once you joined the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I honestly, like I said, same with everybody else. By and large, I had no idea what to expect, and as I said before, I was an airhead back then who didn't even know other branches existed. So I didn't know anything going in, really. And I'm sure I was told some of the guys I was in a debt with kind of gave me rough ideas, but of the guys I went into debt with, I'm the only one who actually made it and stayed in fully. The other guys did. The other 2-3 guys I went in did not last very long. So yeah, no, I guess just it's just so weird. Thinking about it, it's just like I did, like, they all came from military families and all that. They seemed super gung ho, and me, the guy with no military family background whatsoever and having no idea what to expect compared to them, I'm the one who made it through. I will say that one thing that definitely became apparent was that my being bow-legged made drilling hell. They did not like me very much at all. Because my right leg, instead of naturally being straight, it's angled outward. So when I try to turn it inward straight, like they kept yelling at me to do, did not work very well. And they noticed that and hated it every second of it. Like, they just kept telling me, "You suck at drill." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, my leg's bow-legged, I can't help it." But yeah, other than that, I mean, it was just learn as I went. Getting yelled at really didn't do nothing because my mom yelled at us a whole lot. It was just, and everybody yells in my family, not just my mom. Who am I kidding? We all yell. So it's like, didn't really have any expectations, but weirdly enough, I was kind of mentally and emotionally prepared for it all because of the very hectic, dysfunctional nonsense that was my upbringing. But no, it was all right, except for that, I swear, like, it was in the summer. You know what I mean? I joined 2012 in June, so it was like in the dead of summer in South Carolina on Parris Island. And there's one thing of note I will never forget is that one day it was while we were dry firing, with the rifle and whatnot. One thing I'll never forget, it was so hot that I just remember sitting on that grass just roasting, and I saw shade. I saw a tree with a bunch of shade, and everything in me kept screaming, "Get up and run in that shade. I don't care if they hurt me. Just run and jump in that shade right now." And I'm like, to this day, I think about that. I'm so glad I resisted the urge to do that, but I will never forget that feeling of my body just screaming, "Go jump in the shade, go jump in the shade, go jump in the shade." It was all right. You know what I mean? I didn't expect nothing.
Yeah. I think probably everyone here can remember a time of just sitting and baking in the sun and getting, like, the burn line on your head from wearing the cover or, whatever it may be. So, I think, our producing team has said that we're going to take a question from the comments. So from Leanne Wheeler for the group, what is your take on those military veterans who participated in the insurrection? So kind of the elephant in the room, I think, given current events. Does somebody want to volunteer to start on this one? Kate Smith. All right. Lead him from the front.
There was a United States Air Force Academy graduate who was arrested on the floor of the Senate carrying zip ties, wearing a vest, and wearing a helmet. I was so angry and so embarrassed and so ashamed that he went through the same experience I went through and that we took the same oath to the Constitution, not to any president, but to the Constitution. It was an attack on our democracy. And I was embarrassed that one of my brother veterans, one of my brother grads, did something like that. And it's sad that somehow he's been, radicalized, and the, extremist factions got to him, or maybe he was that way when he was at the academy. I don't know, but I was ashamed and but not surprised, because there's always been racism and white nationalism and Confederate flag wavers and supporters of the former president. So I'm still mad.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Rico.
I'm right there with that. Saying, watching that, all I felt when it was happening, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I had to find I was just for days, like during it happening and in the days following, my eyes were basically glued to the computer to every bit of information we could glean from it, because all I felt was horror, just genuine terror at what was happening. And I know military veterans are involved. You know what I mean? As more information comes out, there's a lot of veterans in there, actually, a very disturbing, uncomfortable amount of veterans, many of whom are combat veterans, so on and so forth, who were there ready. They had stacks going through. You know what I mean? They were there to kidnap and kill politicians and whatnot, to overthrow the U.S. government. And seeing that, like Kay said, it really wasn't that surprising, because you know what I mean. People have been ringing bells on that, like, hey, we gotta kind of have a white nationalist problem in the military, or white nationalist groups recruit veterans very aggressively. You know what I mean? Not just a bunch of extremist groups that deliberately target veterans. You know what I mean? It's the writing was on the wall that this was going to be happening. All I can say is that I hope now going forward that the Biden administration, it seems like they're set to do that, actually take that the thing that the FBI on down have been warning about for the longest time, actually take this seriously and get these guys out of our military. Stop, we can't let them come in, get all this training, and then come out and then use it to assault and kill innocent civilians and try to overthrow the government. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Rico. Jojo, did you want to share?
I just said, like Kate and Dorico said, it wasn't surprising that there would be veterans participating in such a tragic event. What was alarming to me were how many active duty, and then the percentage, right? Because when you think about what we are percentage-wise to the national populace, it ain't 20%, but 20% of the insurgents were military affiliated. And that was very alarming, very scary. And the part that broke my heart the most, coming from the Marine Corps and what we're taught about the Marine Corps and how you keep it separate from, all your other BS. And for me to see my flag amongst that crowd in display, it made me cry. And I can't tell you how many Black Marines texted me and called me and just was like, I don't even know how to process this visual that I'm seeing. And I know I cried a lot that whole week. It was very tragic to me.
Yeah, that's real. Actually, I remember I was so shocked by what took place. Actually, I lost some weight. It's the first weight I lost during COVID. But it was shocking, right? It was very stressful to watch. So, Tasha, Shamar, either one of you want to share as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am a reporter. I'm a journalist for the Mills Campanile out of Oakland, California. Back in 2016, the FBI had already given a report warning not only the military, but law enforcement, state and local level, that white ghost skins had infiltrated various aspects of leadership and the chain of command. We already knew there was a possibility that this was going to transpire. There was even reports that some of this was being documented and made well known to leadership before the inauguration. So we had that intel. I think for many of us, it was just a shock to the system to see, as my sister stated, various military flags waving next to the Confederate flag, something that I saw growing up after somebody was lynched or a cross was burned in the yard. On top of that, Blue Lives Matter flags being waved by law enforcement who were there, who were present also. But at the same time, they were attacking the same law enforcement that was attacking Black Lives Matter protesters not even a couple months before that. So I was not surprised. I was not shocked. If anything, I think it's more so a shock to the system of America to have to acknowledge that, yes, this is an issue. We thought for so long racism had dissipated because we had Obama as president, and it was a wake-up call that no, honey, it's still here. It's still prevalent, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tasha. Shamar, you want to close us out on this question?
Absolutely, and it's a bit of a shocker. So I'm going to take a page from Kate. I had mixed emotions. I was angry. I was sad. I was afraid. And from you, Kyle, I did lose weight, but not for the reasons on the screen. I work very closely with someone at my organization. 10 minutes into the insurrection, came prancing into my office, jumping with glee, saying, "My boys are down there taking the Capitol." Someone that I would call a brother. It blew me out of my shoes. I didn't know what to do. I still don't know what to do. I'm still contemplating on how to react to it because I am fearful of retribution, to be completely honest. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are really powerful stories. Thank you all so much for sharing that. I want to recognize we have about 10 minutes left, so I do want us to get to one question that we also had, I think here we go. Jim asks, "I'm a Vietnam veteran, and of course, I learned that our involvement was immoral. Did you ever feel that your mission was immoral? And, particularly for some of the post 9/11 vets, maybe we could start with Rico and Shamar and some of the others. Did you ever feel, even if you necessarily weren't doing something immoral, that maybe your place in the military, Iraq and Afghanistan are controversial wars. They're still going on, and a lot of people have mixed feelings about it. How do you feel about that in terms of your own morality and your own actions?"
Personally, I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just some dumb kid still learning biology. I didn't at all understand the scale of what we was involved with. I didn't understand the Iraq and Afghanistan invasion, the death toll, and the military industrial. I didn't understand anything. At the time, to me, it was just a job. I didn't think anything of it. And as far as morality brought up, the only thing I was ever really taught was do what you got to do to survive. Ain't nobody gonna take care of you but you. You know what I mean? Because especially now seeing as getting out as a civilian, it's a dog eat dog world out here, at least on the civilian side. You know what I mean? So that's why, for the most part, I was different. It wasn't until after the fact, I started to become more politically engaged and learning all these things that I understood, what I was a part of. And I'm not opposed obviously not opposed to the military as it exists in that thing. Because that's a thing I've actually had to debate with people on before. It was like, I'm not opposed to the military as an institution or existing and whatnot. But I'm very much opposed to what our military has been used for. You know what I mean? All these, because I know many people, I've talked to many grunts and those involved. No one goes in with the mindset of, we're going to go kill countless innocent civilians and whatnot, for the profit of some oil company or whatever, No one thinks that, It's what disgusts me is seeing so many good people being used for such malicious ends. So that's my morality on it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Rico. Shamar, you want to give us a little bit of your experiences as well?
Absolutely. So the Marine Corps for me opened my eyes up after the earthquake tsunami in Japan. I was stationed at Mount Fuji on my 21st birthday, the day the earthquake and tsunami hit. And going out there and helping the people made me feel like I did more in my time than in that short 2.5 months we were out there helping the homeless, the people who needed food, the people who needed water. It felt like I did more during that time, that short 2 months, than I did in the entirety of my 4 years of service. That's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Thanks for sharing, Shamar. Tasha, you had a little story you wanted to share as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna just keep it real quick and simple. I was a part of the Abraham Lincoln Battle Group, and in both deployments, we pounded various nations with tomahawks. And I'm talking 67 just from my ship alone. Then on top of that, the USS Cole was bombed while I was there. So I've seen it on both sides. What I understand from our missions is that no, we're not used always for good means, but when we go and build schools, when our hospital ships go to various countries and provide services that their government can't, we tend to teeter-totter on the side of good and bad. I wouldn't say immoral, because there are good people who serve in the military that do good things, but there are people behind us who pull the strings that do not have good means in mind.
Jojo, you wanna share on this one?
I just wanted to echo the same, sentiments. I served in Iraq in 2003, and I grew up in a time, where I witnessed 9/11 happen on television. When I was younger, I watched the Challenger blow up while I was in class. Trauma has been a part of my life growing up, and then the Marine Corps did a really good job on making me believe, in the mission that we're doing at the time. And I remember my father, who I told you guys was a Vietnam veteran twice over, was so distraught that I was going to Iraq. That never, in his mind of me serving, his baby girl was never going to be in a place like he was in Vietnam. And it contributed to his declining health at the time. And my father passed away while I was in Iraq. So I have a lot of confliction with America's wars. And I advocate against these forever wars. I try not to internalize my contribution to that because I was doing what I was told to do, in the name of democracy. And I remember coming back being so surprised on what our families were able to see of what was happening in this war. And there was a lot of conflict because I was still in the Marine Corps mindset. We're doing the right thing, or we're looking for weapons of mass destruction. And the veil had already been lifted for all of our family back home. And so it was hard for me to deprogram and really relearn what was happening all around the world so that I could figure out really my position on that.
Thank you for sharing that. Kate, did you want to share anything on this?
As I was thinking, I learned about the just war doctrine when I was in law school, and I've analyzed war. Vietnam was not a moral war. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are not moral either. But we also look, and I'm so happy that people shared the good that they did in the world, in the military. Thank you for giving me a chance, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, it's complicated, definitely. As I was an infantry officer myself when I deployed to Afghanistan, and I remember I was there actually when Osama bin Laden was killed, and I was the one who woke up my patrol base to tell them that took place. And, we were kind of like, hey, yeah, it's, feeling like, I guess the war's over, right? But, that was 2011. And, even one of my Marines, when we said it, he was like, oh, great. So we get to go home now. And when he said it, I was kind of like, yeah, no. So, it's complicated, right? But we built schools in Afghanistan. We tried our best to help those communities. And I still wonder, what took place there. So, but let's end it with our last little bit here. I'd ask each of you if you could just give one sentence of advice to veterans coming out of the military, particularly Black veterans who are going to be making that transition to become, Black service members making the transition to become veterans. Got any advice for them? Let me start with Miss Kate.
Save your money, invest for your future.
All right, JoJo.
I would just say to find community, don't isolate yourself, and definitely own your service. Don't keep that a secret. Use it just as our other counterparts that leave the military who seem to be more esteemed. But that's what they want. They want us to feel that disenfranchisement and then let it go, and don't let it go. You wear that flag, you tell them who you are, what you did, how you contributed, and matter. Definitely matter.
Tasha.
Go to school for what you're going to go to school for, but get mental counseling. Even if you don't believe you need it, trust me, you need it.
Rico?
Make your VA claims before you get out. I do not care how tough you think you are, whatever, or like many dudes who think, no, I shouldn't do that. No. Make your VA claims. Whatever wear and tear you've accumulated during your time in, you deserve to be compensated for it. All right? So please, I cannot stress this enough. Make your VA claims. Get it done.
All right. And Shamar, sorry I had you go last, so I hope somebody didn't take your advice, but you're up.
They did, unfortunately, but that's okay. I was going to say something along the lines of go to school and be aware of your mental stability or instability. Own it. If you have issues, reach out. There are more people who feel the same way that you do, but they're keeping it to themselves, and that's not okay. We're a community.
Awesome. Thank you for all of the great advice, experiences, and everything you all just shared. And I want to thank the viewers for joining us. For this panel, we focused on the history of Black veterans still serving their community after hanging up their uniforms. But at Common Defense, we believe that our nation is strongest when we value the diverse intergenerational history and experience of not just veterans, but community leaders across the country. So we do want to remind people that are watching that our organization is a progressive home for those who serve their country, and we're dedicated to making a community space for other veterans and veterans of all walks of life. And if you are interested in joining up with Common Defense or learning more about our organization, the link has been scrolling down at the bottom, commondefense.us/join. Again, we do advocacy work, we do lobbying work, organizing, but we also try to be a community for one another for a lot of the reasons that we just listed. So with that, thank you all for joining, and we'll see you later.